My name is Linda Harris. I am 56 years old, and if you asked most people in my neighborhood who I am, they'd probably say, "Oh, that's the woman who was always caring for the Thompsons." For more than a decade, my life revolved around my husband's aging parents. I cooked for them, cleaned their home, drove them to appointments, sat with them through sleepless nights, and watched their health decline day by day. When I married John Harris, I knew family was important to him. He was the eldest son, the one his parents leaned on. His sister, Caroline, was the opposite. She was the baby of the family, spoiled, used to having everything done for her. Even as adults, she clung to that role, drifting in and out of her parents' lives, showing up only for holidays or when she needed money. At first, I didn't mind. I loved John, and by extension, I loved his parents. They welcomed me warmly when we married. His father, William, was a stoic man with a deep laugh, and his mother, Ruth, had the gentlest eyes I'd ever seen. They weren't wealthy, but they had a modest house, some savings, and the kind of dignity that comes from a lifetime of hard work. When Ruth's health began to decline in her 70s, I stepped in naturally. It started small, helping with meals, reminding her to take medication. But soon it grew into something much larger. William couldn't keep up with the demands of caring for her, and John's job kept him out of the house for long hours. Caroline, of course, was nowhere to be found. She lived an hour away, but claimed she was too busy to help. So it fell to me. I became Ruth's full-time caregiver, even while holding down my part-time job at the library. I learned how to check her blood sugar, how to monitor her blood pressure, how to lift her frail body without hurting her. I sat up through the night when she was restless, holding her hand, whispering comfort until she drifted off. It wasn't easy. My back ached constantly, my own hobbies disappeared, and my friendships withered because I was always too exhausted to meet up. But I told myself it was worth it. Ruth needed me. William needed me. And when he passed away a few years later, I promised Ruth that I wouldn't leave her side. Caroline showed up for the funeral, wearing designer sunglasses and a black dress that looked like it cost more than my monthly salary. She cried loudly, made sure everyone noticed her grief, then disappeared again as soon as the service ended. She didn't stay to help sort through William's belongings, didn't sit with Ruth in the empty house, didn't ask what she could do. That was left to me. Over the next 5 years, Ruth's health deteriorated further. Dementia set in, slowly stealing away the sharp, kind woman I once knew. Some days she thought I was her sister. Other days she didn't recognize me at all. But I stayed. I bathed her, fed her, read to her when she was lucid, and held her when she cried in confusion. John helped where he could, but the truth was that most of the burden fell on me. He was grateful, but often too tired himself. I didn't resent him. I resented Caroline. Every holiday she would breeze into town, hug Ruth tightly for a few minutes, pose for photos, then disappear again. She never saw the daily grind, the soiled sheets, the endless laundry, the sleepless nights. One Thanksgiving, while I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, I overheard her whispering to John, "You know Mum and Dad have some money saved, right? And the house is worth something. When the time comes, I hope things are divided fairly." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Fairly? Where was the fairness in me giving up my life, my career, my health, while she contributed nothing? But I kept quiet. Silence, I had learned, often spoke louder than words. By the time Ruth passed away at 86, I felt both relief and heartbreak. Relief that her suffering was over. Heartbreak that my role, the one that had consumed so much of my life, was suddenly gone. I organized the funeral, handled the flowers, wrote the obituary, even picked out her dress. Caroline arrived again, this time with crocodile tears and a new boyfriend in tow. She hugged me as if we were old friends, whispering, "Thank you for everything you did for Mum." I smiled stiffly, but inside, bitterness boiled. A week later, we gathered in the lawyer's office for the reading of the will. Mr. Jacobs, a balding man with glasses perched on the edge of his nose, shuffled the papers before him. John sat beside me, his hand resting on mine. Caroline sat across from us, legs crossed, her face a mask of self-satisfaction. "To my daughter, Caroline," Mr. Jacobs read. "I leave the family home, as well as the bulk of my savings and investments." Caroline's eyes lit up. She glanced at me, a smirk tugging at her lips. "To my son, John, I leave a modest sum and a few personal heirlooms." John squeezed my hand, his jaw tight. "And to my daughter-in-law, Linda," Mr. Jacobs continued, "I leave my gratitude for the years of care you gave me in my final days." That was it. Gratitude. No money, no recognition. Just words. I sat frozen, my face carefully blank, while Caroline practically glowed with triumph. "Well," she said breezily, "I suppose Mum knew what was fair." John started to speak, but I squeezed his hand to stop him. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to protest, because Caroline didn't know what I knew. For the last 5 years of Ruth's life, I had been the one managing her finances. She was no longer capable of handling her own bills, and John had trusted me to take care of it. I paid the utilities, balanced the checkbook, managed the medical expenses. And quietly, with Ruth's blessing in her lucid moments, I moved the majority of her liquid assets into a joint account with my name on it. It wasn't theft. It was protection. Ruth knew Caroline would swoop in like a vulture, and she wanted to make sure I was taken care of. "You've given me everything, Linda," she had whispered one clear evening. "You deserve to be safe when I'm gone." So while Caroline celebrated her supposed windfall, I knew the truth. The house was falling apart, needing thousands in repairs. The savings she thought she inherited were already gone, legally transferred to me long before Ruth's death. I said nothing. I let her gloat. Because the sweetest revenge was letting her believe she had won, when in reality she had inherited nothing but crumbling walls and empty accounts. Caroline left the lawyer's office that day as if she had just been crowned queen of the family. She strutted to her car, designer heels clicking against the pavement, chattering to her boyfriend about renovations she would make to the house. She spoke of selling Ruth's antique furniture, of knocking down walls, of hosting lavish parties. I walked quietly behind her, John at my side, saying nothing. "Linda," she said, turning to me with a patronizing smile, "I just want to thank you for all the years you cared for Mum." She really appreciated it. Of course, gratitude doesn't pay the bills, does it? She gave a little laugh, like it was a harmless joke, then slid into her car. I watched her drive away, my hands clenched into fists. But inside, I wasn't angry. I was calm. Because I knew the storm that was waiting for her. Within a month, Caroline moved into Ruth's old house. It had been my second home for years, a place where I had scrubbed floors, changed sheets, and cooked countless meals. To me, it smelled of hard work and memory. To Caroline, it smelled of money. She hosted a housewarming party, inviting friends and showing off every room as if she had earned it. John and I didn't go. She didn't even bother to invite us. But the cracks began to show almost immediately. The house was old, built in the 1950s, and Ruth and William had done minimal updates over the years. The plumbing was failing, The roof leaked, and the electrical wiring was outdated. Within weeks, Caroline was on the phone with contractors, her cheerful tone replaced with irritation. "Do you know it'll cost nearly $15,000 just to fix the roof?" she complained to John over the phone one evening. "And that's not even touching the plumbing. Mom left me a money pit." John, bless him, bit his tongue. He wanted to tell her the truth, that Mom hadn't left her anything worth celebrating. But I shook my head. Let her find out on her own. Meanwhile, Caroline began poking around Ruth's finances. She called banks, insurance companies, and investment firms, looking for the fortune she believed was hers. But every call ended the same. No accounts in Ruth's name, nothing beyond the empty savings account already passed down to her. She called John next. "Where's the money?" she demanded. "Mum had savings." "She told me once she had at least 100,000 put away." "Don't tell me it's gone." John shrugged over the phone. "Mum handled her finances with Linda." "You'll have to ask her. When Caroline showed up at my door, she didn't bother with pleasantries. She stood there in her expensive coat, her expression sharp." "What happened to Mum's money?" I smiled softly. "I managed her bills and expenses, Caroline. Medical care is expensive, as you know. The savings were used for her care." She narrowed her eyes. "All of it? Every penny?" I met her gaze without flinching. "Your mother's last years were comfortable." "That doesn't come cheap." She huffed, muttered something under her breath, and stormed off. But I could see the doubt flickering in her eyes. Over the next year, her resentment grew. She tried renting out the spare rooms in the house to cover expenses, but tenants complained about the leaks and the drafty windows. She maxed out credit cards trying to keep up with repairs, her glamorous lifestyle slowly eroding under the weight of reality. At family gatherings, she would drop sharp little comments. "Some of us got stuck with the burden of property," she'd say, swirling her wine glass. Or, "It's funny how gratitude doesn't translate into security, isn't it, Linda?" I never took the bait. I simply smiled, refilled her glass, and stayed silent. Silence was my weapon. Silence was my revenge. Emily, my niece, and Carolyn's daughter saw through it all. She was in college by then, studying social work, and she often visited me to escape her mother's bitterness. "Aunt Linda," she said one afternoon as we baked cookies in my kitchen, "Mum's losing her mind over that house. She thought it would solve all her problems, but it's only made them worse. She's angry all the time." I nodded, sliding a tray into the oven. "Sometimes life gives us what we think we want, only to show us the truth of who we are." Emily looked at me curiously. "Did Grandma really leave her everything?" I smiled, wiping my hands on a towel. "On paper, yes. But paper isn't the whole story, sweetheart. What your grandmother gave me can't be written down." Emily tilted her head, puzzled, but didn't press further. As months turned into years, Caroline's situation worsened. She tried selling the house, but buyers balked at the long list of needed repairs. Realtors offered her far less than she thought it was worth. She refused to accept it. Pride wouldn't let her. Meanwhile, the gratitude Ruth had left me quietly flourished. The joint account in my name held more than enough for John and me to live comfortably. We paid off our mortgage, took a long-delayed vacation to Italy, and I even returned to painting, something I hadn't done since my 20s. Caroline didn't know, of course. She assumed I was scraping by on John's modest salary, just as she assumed she had inherited wealth. That assumption was her prison. She lived in bitterness, convinced she'd been cheated, while I lived in quiet contentment, knowing the truth. One Christmas, Caroline tried to flaunt her supposed superiority. She arrived at the family gathering in a flashy car, wearing glittering jewelry, and handed out expensive gifts. But I noticed the credit card slips stuffed hastily into her purse, the way her hands trembled when she thought no one was looking. She was drowning, but she would rather go under in style than admit defeat. As she sat across from me, bragging about a renovation project that would never happen, I felt a strange mixture of pity and satisfaction. She had wanted everything. She had schemed for it, counted on it, gloated about it. And now she had it. A crumbling house, empty accounts, and a life built on lies. And I had peace. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a steady, silent unraveling of her illusions while I quietly thrived in the background. Caroline's downfall didn't come all at once. It came slowly, piece by piece, like a wall crumbling brick by brick. For years, she clung to the illusion that she had inherited wealth. She boasted to her friends, flashed the title to the house like a trophy, and strutted through family gatherings as though she were the matriarch. But the truth always catches up eventually. The house ate her alive. Every season brought a new disaster. Pipes bursting in winter, termites in spring, mold in the basement during humid summers. Each problem demanded money she didn't have, and each repair left her deeper in debt. She tried applying for home equity loans, but the bank laughed her out the door once they saw the state of her finances. One day, I saw her car parked crooked in front of the old house as I passed by on my way home from the grocery store. I slowed down and couldn't help but watch. The once pristine lawn was overgrown. Shingles dangled loose from the roof, and paint peeled from the siding like scabs. Caroline stood on the porch, screaming into her phone, her voice carried across the yard. "I can't keep this place up, Mark. It's falling apart. Don't you get it? The house was supposed to be my ticket out, and instead it's dragged me under." I didn't linger. I drove home, the groceries rattling softly in the back seat, a quiet satisfaction blooming inside me. This was what she had wanted so desperately. This was the prize she had gloated over, and it had destroyed her. Meanwhile, John and I thrived. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. With the money Ruth had entrusted me, we paid off debts, fixed our own home, and finally took the time to enjoy life. I picked up painting again, filling canvases with colour and light. John retired early, and together we travelled: Italy, Greece, even Japan, places we had only dreamed of when I was bent over Ruth's bedside night after night. We lived, while Caroline drowned in the very inheritance she had craved. Emily, now in her 20s, grew more curious about her mother's bitterness. She would stop by my house often, sitting with me over tea. One evening, she finally asked the question that had lingered for years. "Aunt Linda, why does Mom hate you so much?" I paused, swirling the tea in my cup. "Hate is a heavy word, Emily." She leaned forward. "But it's true, isn't it? She blames you for something. She says Grandma only left her scraps because of you." I sighed. Emily was old enough now. She deserved the truth. "Your grandmother loved you, Emily. She loved you dearly, but she also saw people for who they were. She knew I had given years of my life to care for her, and she knew your mother never lifted a finger. That's why she made sure I was taking care of." Emily's brows furrowed. "But the will," I smiled softly. "The will is a piece of paper. What really mattered was what she entrusted to me long before that day. Your mother never understood that love isn't measured in money. It's measured in sacrifice, in care, in loyalty. And she gave me her trust because of that." Emily sat back, processing my words. "So, Mom, never really got what she thought?" "No," I said gently. She inherited walls and memories she never valued. But the real inheritance, the one that made life possible after Ruth was gone, was never hers to claim. Emily was quiet for a long time. Then she smiled, small but genuine. Grandma was smarter than people gave her credit for, wasn't she? She was, I agreed. Not long after, Caroline's life reached its breaking point. She defaulted on her credit cards, her car was repossessed, and eventually she was forced to sell the house she had clung to so desperately. The offers were pitiful, far less than she had dreamed, but she had no choice. When the deal closed, the money was swallowed immediately by debts. She was left with nothing. The day she moved out, I happened to pass by again. She stood on the porch for the last time, staring at the house with hollow eyes. Her new car was a beat-up sedan, her clothes far simpler than the flashy outfits she once wore. She looked small, diminished, a shadow of the woman who had once gloated over me in the lawyer's office. For a moment, I almost pitied her. But then I remembered every sneer, every gloating remark, every time she dismissed my years of sacrifice with a wave of her manicured hand, and the pity dissolved. Because this was justice. Years later, when John and I sat in our garden, sipping wine on a warm summer evening, I thought about Ruth. I wondered if she was watching somehow, if she saw how things had unfolded. I imagined her smiling, knowing that her trust had been honored, that her love had been placed in the right hands. Emily visited often, and she never forgot to thank me. Not for money or inheritance, but for the love and stability I had given her in a family that often felt fractured. She had become a social worker, dedicating her life to helping others, and I couldn't have been prouder. Grandma always said you were the strongest woman she knew, Emily told me once. Now I see why. Her words warmed me more than any amount of money ever could. As for Caroline, she drifted further into bitterness. She cut herself off from most of the family, ashamed of her downfall, but too proud to admit her mistakes. People whispered about her debts, about her failed ventures, about how the inheritance she once boasted about had left her empty-handed. She became a cautionary tale, a reminder that greed always consumes itself. And me? I lived quietly, peacefully, with John by my side, and Emily as the daughter I never had. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to shout. My revenge had already played out in silence, unfolding over years until it reached its inevitable conclusion. Caroline had inherited nothing but emptiness. I had inherited peace, and that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all.